What's up? What's up? So, yeah, the live stream is not working. Um, I don't know what is up with it. So, I gotta just record it and upload the video. But it's all good. That's the good thing about doing it this way, I guess, is that you can watch it at your leisure. And even if the platform in question is not working properly, um, you can still upload it. So I'm not sure what is going on. I did a bunch of things. I reinstalled OBS. That didn't work. Every time I upload, I'm getting 0 kilobytes per second upload. And I tried like 5 or 6 times to restart the stream, and every time it does the same thing. So we'll have to do it this way this time, and then on Friday I will try it again as usual, like a regular stream, and see if that works. So anyway, let's get into this and practice some of this CSS stuff. So, like in the class, we talked about the basic anatomy, so we'll start there. Um, open up your VS Code, and we will make a folder. I already have one here, so just make a folder somewhere, drag and drop that folder onto VS Code, and you will open up the folder, and we can start writing some stuff. So I'm going to make an image. Whoops, that's wrong. Delete that. I need an image folder. So img folder, and then make a new file. We'll call it index.html. And that went in the wrong place. Move that there. And I'm going to also make a folder for CSS. Not in that folder, in this folder. CSS folder. And inside of the CSS folder, I'm going to make a new file called style.css. Okay, so this is where all of our CSS is going to go, where it's ultimately going to go, because I have to show you the different ways of doing CSS. And there is a couple, just checking, making sure that my mic is working. There's a few different ways of writing, or a few different locations where we can put our CSS, like we discussed in class. We're going to go through those. But ultimately, it's going to end up in this file, because this is where we want it to be. Okay? So we can start writing our doc type, then our HTML tag, head tags, and body tags. And in the head, we're going to put the regular stuff, right? The title tag. Then the meta, the character sets. Then the description and the content. There. So, okay, so first off, before we add in the link, we're going to add in the link to here in a minute. right? We're gonna link that here. First though, let's build up a little bit of stuff in the body. So let's make just a container, and then in there let's just build a basic interface. So the same basic interface that we've been working with. So I'll make a header, a nav bar, a main, and just a footer. So like that. In the header, we'll put some h1, and we'll just call this. We'll just put in here the title of using CSS. The navigation will do the same as we always have. So we'll put an OL, and in the OL we'll put some list items, and in the list items we'll put A tags. Okay, and we'll put home, and we can just make these dummy links for now. I mean, we're just practicing, so we can just make that a dummy link. Home, about, and just copy the one line and paste it in. So home about, contact, whatever, right? We're not going to really be using these, we're just practicing, so we just throw something in there. Now in the main content, we're going to write some stuff that we can play around with. So what I'm going to do, I'm just doing it off the top of my head. What I'm thinking is this might be the best way to break it down, sort of like how I quickly did in the one class. I'm going to put a bunch of H1s in here. Now I'm going to show you something. In VS Code, you can use HTML formulas. So if I put the name of the tag I want to add in and say times it by, times is the star key, times by a number, right, any number, it'll put that amount of those things in there. Okay, there's a lot more advanced stuff you can do with that, but that's the basic thing. So you put the name of the tag, in this case I want H1 tags, times whatever number I want, however many of them. Also, what we can do is insert text, plain text, into the tag, right? I'm just going to put text because I just want basic text in there, so just something we can see. So H1 times 7, and insert the plain text that I put there, and we'll get 7 H1 tags because I put times 7, and inside of them it just says text. Okay, so there's one thing. Then I'm gonna put in a couple divs with a class of box. We'll okay, yeah, we'll leave it like that with the class of box. So we'll leave that like that. And then the footer, we'll put in some H6, and then we'll put what we've been putting in there, and copy semicolon 2021 my site .io. We'll save that. Now we're gonna just quickly take a look at it. Go to the tab, right click it, copy path, run up on your web browser, and boom, there we go. Looking like how we're used to seeing it. But okay, so CSS now. We're going to use the CSS to make this look like something. Now, like we talked about, there's a couple different places we can put our CSS. For example, I could go in here, this is the way that you should never do it. We could technically come in here and say, and use an attribute, a style attribute, and say color red, semicolon. So color, colon, red, semicolon. Now, if I come back in here, then that one is going to be red. It works. But here's the reason why we don't do this. If I wanted all of these to be red, I would have to go in on each one of these and do the same thing over and over and over again. Or copy it, copy this into there. You know what I mean? I would have to keep doing this on all the things that I wanted to make that red. And that would take forever and ever and ever and ever. And it would just defeat the purpose of what, you know what I mean? It would just take too long. So that's why we don't use those, we don't use CSS as an attribute, right? Another way that we can deploy CSS is we could do style tags, which I usually put in the inside of the head. And then we could just write CSS in here. Okay, now sometimes we'll do it this way when we're practicing, but only when we're practicing. Okay, only when we're just messing around. And I'm going to show you why. So let's say I start going on and doing my thing. So I say HTML, and I say font family sans serif, which will change all of this text on the whole entire page, because see, it's in the HTML tag, which means that any text that is in between the opening and closing HTML tag, i.e. all of the text on the whole entire site, is going to be this font family or font type, right? So it's going to change anything, and every type of text I put in there is going to change, right? It's all good. Then I can go and start doing the body, and notice I'm doing this in a certain order, right? The HTML, then the body, then I'm going to work my way in to all of these different parts. Okay, so on the body, I might zero out the margin, and I'm going to show you why I just did that a little bit later, and over the next classes as well. We're going to be explaining a lot of these things. So their body, then the wrapper, So dot, because remember, this selector here and this selector here, remember we talked about there are different types of selectors. There's an element selector where you select the tag and it will affect any and everything to do with that tag. Every instance of that tag, which I'm going to explain in a bit, but we're getting to there. Then you can select a class, or you can select an ID. There are other selectors more than these three, but I'm just showing you these three at first because we're keeping it basic here. Right now, I am selecting a class, and to select a class, you use a period and then the name that you gave the class. So in this case, dot wrapper. Then it knows that I'm targeting this, okay, and the stuff inside. Right, so the wrapper now, let's say I make it, okay, I'm going to give it a border first, because the border is going to show you what's going on. So I'll make it thicker, 5px solid, hashtag 222. So we can refresh this and we can see the border there now. Okay, now watch. The reason why we use a wrapper, and you've been seeing this so far, why do we use a wrapper? Because it allows us to do something like this. Width 70%, margin auto. Now, this changes the width of it, obviously. This margin auto in particular, when you make a block element margin auto, it puts it in the middle of whatever it's in, right? So basically, in the middle of the HTML tag. Okay, so it centers it on the screen. See? Okay, so let's get down to this part here. Hold on, let me just make sure that I'm... Okay, so... because there's a couple of things I gotta show you, but before we go any further, I'll show you this. See what we've been doing so far is we've been putting the style tags inside of this HTML document. Okay, now what does that mean? Let's hypothetically say I was going to add in another page, right? So about.html. Okay, so if I were going to be adding in more pages, every single page that I would be adding in would have to have all of this copied over as well as the HTML. Okay, remember when we generated more pages, we finished the index page and then we copied everything and then we pasted it all over into here, into the new page, right? Okay, that's all well and good, but here's the problem with doing your CSS this way, embedded in the HTML, is if you embed it in the HTML and then you come here one day and you say, you know what, I don't feel like having my font this kind anymore. I want to change it to this one, right? You would have to then go and do that over and over and over again for every single file that you may have on your website. So if you had a 50-page website and it was written in HTML, that means that you would have to go and change whatever you wanted to change 50 times over and over and over again. And that would be a real pain to do. And this is why we do not make production websites. Anytime you ship your code, we do not make production websites with with CSS embedded in the HTML. Never. That's the reason why. Okay? What we do when we are making a production website is we link every HTML page to the CSS file. Okay? And then we put all the CSS in the CSS file. Okay? So, how do we link to it? We do this. Link href, and we link to the file. In this case, it's in the CSS file, so CSS /. Once we put the /, it'll show us the file in there. If there were, let's say hypothetically speaking, if we had more files in here, you would see it in there once I did that. Once I do what I just did here. Once I put the /, see, it'll show me the files that are in there. I want the style.css. The delete me, I'm gonna obviously delete. I just made that to show you. So that, now we gotta add a couple more attributes to this. The rel attribute is like how is this relative to the document, right? How is this file that we're linking to, how is it relative to this document? It's a style sheet. And then it's going to want to know type, like the document type. Well, the document is made up of text that is CSS. Okay. Now that we've added this in, when this HTML page loads in here in the browser, it's going to know, look, when you load the page, link this style sheet. Just add in the style sheet to what's going on, and it's going to load up whatever we put in there and apply it to the HTML. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of that About Us page. So that's going to load. When I refresh it, it will load as long as this is saved. So let's look, and boom, still loads. And because I did change this, it changed the font, which I'm going to change back. There. Okay. And it will change the font back now that I did that. You see? So now the difference with this now is that anytime we wanted to generate a new page, we can now copy this and just drop it in the new page that we want to generate, and it's going to work. Let me just, I'll just put something in here like, this is the new page. So now if I load the new page, see, this is the new page, and we didn't have to go and copy all the CSS over to the new page. It's loading CSS into both pages from one singular source, which is this document right here. And that is why we use external CSS on a production site. So the one file can serve all of the different HTML pages at the same time, one time. Okay? So that is one of the main things I had to explain on that front. Now, going back up to the anatomy after explaining that, um, we can clearly see here the same anatomy that I explained up here, right? Um, Writing CSS starts with a selector, right? We have to select something, which is what we did here and what we did here, right? And what we did there. We selected a thing and we said, look, hey, wrapper, make a border for yourself and make yourself this width and position yourself this way, right? Now we can select anything. We can select big things and we can select small things. We can be really specific about which things that we want to select, right? We're not going to get into any advanced stuff, obviously, now, but there are ways to select, like, say, this H1 out of this, you know, like within the main, select this specific H1. You can do that, okay? There are ways to do that. There's multiple ways of doing it, actually, right? There's many ways of doing it. Again, we're going to keep it real simple, and we're going to mess around with what we wrote in the HTML. So let's go back to this part here, the selectors. So when we select, if I were to select H1, which we have a whole bunch of them here, H1, 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 a whole bunch of them. If I were to select H1, and because I'm selecting the tag, I just write it out like that. I don't use a dot, like a period or a hashtag or anything. Just H1, opening curly brace, closing curly brace. And I say, you know, color red. Then, look, it's going to make all of them red. Every instance of H1 is going to be red. Okay, now there are certain times we're going to want to do something like that. And then there's going to be certain times where we would not want to do something like that. Because I don't want all of my H1s to be red, right? Like typically, I'd want them to blend in with the rest of the site. We want them to be black, right? That's black there. This is what we would typically want them to look like. Maybe I just want to say select this one, right? Well, there are ways that we can do that. Now, like I said, there's a multiple ways that this can be done. But for the sake of this class, because we're just learning this stuff, I got to show you. I'm only going to show you a couple ways. We're going to get to the more advanced ways later on down the line. But the one of the ways is we can give it a class, right? Remember, we talked about classes and what they are. A class is just a class name that you can give to any tag, any element. You can give it a class. You can also give it an ID. But the class is a way for you to classify that specific element. So I can give the second one a class of, you know, H1 red. Okay. So now I can use this class that I just gave it, H1 red, to single out this particular one and make it red. So now I can call that H1 red, and remember, it's a class, so I have to use a period to say, look, there's a class out there named H1 red. This dot is like, it's a class. So I say there's a class out there named h1 red, and I want you to do something to it. And then the CSS is like, what do you want me to do to it? And then you say, make the color of it red. Whoops. Colon, semicolon. And it will not make it red. What did I do? Mess up here. H1 red. H1 red. H1 red. Color red. Make sure those are both saved. Let me see here. H1, and this should override this, which is something else I have to show you. But let me see here. H1. It's not showing my class on there. Which means all of this is right, all of this is right, and my browser might be cached. Let me just do something here, just to see if it's cached my browser. Yes, my browser is cached. Now, sometimes, oh, wait a minute. No. I'm looking at the wrong file. My bad. There's the problem. I had the wrong file loaded. Yeah, so it was looking for the about page, not the index page. My bad. So yeah, this all works. That works, and it's overriding this, which is something I'm going to explain to you in 1 minute. But as we can see, this H1 has been singled out, and because of this class, which we called up here and told it to be red, it now made that text red, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, I was saying that this is overriding this, which it is. This is another aspect of CSS that I have to tell you about, is that this is all working in a hierarchy, okay? This here is making all of the H1 text to be whatever color we want it to be, right? If I change it, it's going to change all of the H1 text like we showed you before. But the one that we still singled out and made red is still going to be red, because this is what you would call an override, right? This here is overriding this. So anytime you hear that somebody say that, they say like an override, a CSS override, you'll know what that means. It means that you have a previous setting that you have set that's affecting a bunch of things in most cases, right? Like, you can tell H1 how you want it to behave. You can tell H2 how you want it to behave, right? H3 and so on. And then even like paragraph text, right? Because remember, there's paragraph text, we've used it before, where you might have paragraph text in lorem tab, right? That text here, this is the paragraph text, that's another thing. Like, these are all just different things that we can change how they look, right? Font size, I'm going to over exaggerate this, 100 pixels, right? And it's going to make it really, really big. These are all different things that we can change. But if we single out in some way one of these things that we may make like a new default look for, if we later then come down here and change one of those instances, right? In this case, we're changing this particular instance of H1 that overrides the previous setting. Okay. So that's a class. We did that with a class, right? Here we did this with a class. We can also use a ID, but again, you would never see me use an ID to do such a thing like this. Okay, you would never see me do that. It would still work if we used an ID, but I don't typically do that. What you would see me use an ID for would be something more along the lines of this. If I were going to use it to like link to a part of the page. Let's say I wanted to make the home page link to the top of the page, or link to a part of the page, I should say. I would say up here, and we should, before we do what I'm going to do, we really should put the language attribute in here. And I could give it another attribute, which would be an ID. And the ID would be home. And then I could make this link to hashtag home, right? Now, because of that, it's going to make this, wait, let me make the font big again, just so that we can see what I'm showing you. When I click on home now, see how it jumps to the top of the page? That is how you link to a part of the page. We're linking to the HTML selector, which is the very top of the page. So that is typically how you would see me use an ID. I would use an ID for functionality. Now, with that being said, though, you can still call things in CSS by using an ID. Let's say I did this and said hashtag home. This is the ID that I assigned onto the HTML tag. So anything I do to this ID in the CSS is going to affect the HTML tag, which is the same as this, right? This would now be the same thing. If I gave it a background color, for example, this is going to hurt your eyes. See, it's going to make the whole background of the entire HTML selector green, because this ID is assigned to the HTML tag. This would be no different than if I put this on here. It would work the same way because it's affecting the same element. Look, I know this might sound confusing, but you have to think of using you have to think of CSS and HTML as you know those connected dot drawings that you give like the kids at the restaurant on the back of the placemat where they put their plate. You have the connected dots, and when you connect all the dots properly, it ends up being a drawing. HTML and CSS are very similar in theory because you're connecting dots, but you, as the developer, you as the person writing it, are manually making up the dots and then connecting the dots. Okay? So this is something you're going to have to wrap your mind around. Okay? So we got elements, class names, ID names. We explained the internal HTML, external HTML, and inline. The coding etiquette is just like we're seeing here. I'm going to get rid of those two selectors though, because all we need is the H1 in paragraph. Now, as you can see, the coding etiquette, my formatting is always the same, right? I put my selector, opening curly brace, and then I put my entries, my properties and values are tabbed in. Okay, I don't want to see any of this type of stuff going on, because look how much harder it would be to read. I know there are some people that do write their CSS like this, and it'll still work. It just makes it harder to read. Okay, as you can see, this is harder to look at than this, because you know, okay, this is a selector, then you have your the changes you want to be made tabbed in. It's just easier to read that way. So write it like this every time, right? And don't get lazy with the tabbing in on things. I mean, there's no need for you to, because the editor does it for you. Every time you press enter, it puts you in it tabs you in automatically. So you don't fight the editor. Let the editor do the work for you, right? Okay, now the colors thing. We got to cover that. So you've already seen me use the colors a couple different ways. Like you've seen me say what you just had there, 000, or I can lighten it up a little bit. 444 is like lighter gray. 999 would be light gray. FFF is white. These are hex codes, right? Now, you're not going to memorize these. And if you do start to memorize some of them, you're going to memorize some of them, but you're not going to remember like what this specific, unless you use it all the time, then you might remember it. But generally, hex codes are not something that people just start to, build a library in their brain of. There is a color picker in VS Code, obviously, where we're looking at it. You can use the color picker, right? And if you don't have a color picker in the editor that you choose to use, if it's not VS Code, then just Google, or just go to Google and type in, color picker. And then you get an online color picker, and then you're good to go, right? Just use one of these. It'll give you the hex, it'll give you the RGB value, and then you just copy it over, right? So there's hex codes. There are you can just say the color like this. And no matter which way you do it, you're still going to get the color picker, so you can do that. There are RGB values, which you have to select 3 values, right? And the color picker will still work with this, right? There's RGBA, which is adds alpha. Now, here's the thing. Whoops, red. No matter which one of these you choose to use, you can, if you're using VS Code, see like RGB, and then it puts the 3 values in there. If this bar here, and this is specifically for people that are using VS Code, the color picker will allow you to cycle through different hues. But there's also this bar, and this bar will automatically add alpha if you want something to be see-through, right? It'll change the alpha number, which is this one here. It's RGBA. But you can still change it to a hex code, and the hex code will still accept alpha, right? And there are different, like there's HSLA and so on. You can cycle through those, okay? So let me change that back. We will actually look at this. It'll be better to look at that when we get down to the what's it called we made? The div that we made down there a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of this background color, and let's continue on with this. Okay, so we're going to push this down because we're going to continue building up what we put in here. So we're just going to make a little frame so you can see the different parts of the page. So we did the wrapper. Now we're going to do the dot header. We're going to say height. Whoops, I did that wrong. Height 50. Actually, no, I can't do that yet because I haven't showed you this yet. So let's say 600 pixels in height. We're going to say border bottom and we're going to match the border bottom here with the border style we have put here. So I'm going to copy the 5px solid 222 and put that there. Now when we look at it, see, we have a header space. Awesome. Now we're going to do the dot nav. Remember, these are all classes. Remember, header, the class header, the class nav. Next we're going to do the main and then the footer, right? So dot nav height 80 pixels, and then I'm going to also repeat myself here. There is a different way that we could deploy these border bottoms, but I'm going to not do that because it's going to confuse you. So we're going to do it the kind of not the repeaty way. One of the things that we're not supposed to do in CSS is repeat ourselves. But we're gonna get to the ways that we can mitigate this. We're gonna be getting to that in a later class, so we're not gonna cover that just yet. We're gonna cover backgrounds and padding. So we're getting there. So nav, wrapper, header, nav, the dot main. Now the dot main, we're not going to give a height because the main, it's going to size itself, because the main is a it's a container that is going to constantly be changing size depending on if we put more content in there. It's going to automatically size itself. All of these divs automatically size themselves depending on the content, right? But the ones that we gave height to are not generally going to be things that we're going to be adding content into like that. Like, we're not going to be putting any more than just this into the header. And the nav bar isn't going to be going down the page anyway. It's going to be going across the page. So, you know. So one of the things that I will do to the main, though, is give it padding. Because, see, look, what happens here? See how the text and the content of the main nav, it just rides right up to the line, right? To the line of the border of the main div, the main content div. What if I wanted to give them more space? I'll exaggerate this so you can see. See how everything's pushed in now? There's space between here and here because we added that padding. Now, if I were to just lessen that to, say, 10 pixels, then it's a little more subtle, but it works. It gives your eye some breathing room, right? That's what padding does, okay? So we want to add space inside of the thing and the content. If we do this and inspect, see the green? That is padding, that green space there. If I exaggerate this some more, again, so it's more prominent, we can see it better. See the green? That is the padding. Okay, padding. And if we come down here, we can see padding, right? So that is what's up with that. So I'll bring that back down to 10, and we can leave the main like that. Now, just to show you something, because again, I want you to really, and because we're not doing a live stream, I can't answer questions because obviously there's no question bar. So I want to kind of cover some bases here. I'm going to show you another example of this override business. Whoops. Font size family. See what happened there? I told the main content div, the main content container, to make the text Times New Roman. Meanwhile, the entire HTML selector is saying be sans serif. I just overrode the sans serif with Times New Roman. And notice how it's only affecting the selector that I told it to do it on, which is the main content div. If I took this out of here and put it in the nav, then look, see the nav now is is sans serif and this is Times New Roman, they're going to switch when I refresh this. See? Because I now overrode the font family here and the HTML selector, which is the biggest selector. Remember, if I tell the HTML to do something, it's going to affect everything. It switches it like that. We're going to be talking more about why that does that and why that works in a later class. But I just want you to wrap your head around it, okay? How this overriding stuff works. Okay, put everything back to normal. Now, the footer. What do I want to put on the footer? Oh, there's something that I forgot to put on the main. The same border bottom thing here. Because we're creating borders like that. There's nothing really that I want to put on the footer, so I'm going to just, actually, we can put background color and maybe switch that up. And there's, you can see it is working, but there's there's something we have to do. See, look, watch. When I inspect the footer, you're going to see something going on in here. See that? Okay, remember, the green, when you see green, it's showing you padding. When you see that pinkish color there, it's showing you margin. So there's margin. And the margin is coming from the H6, right? That's within the footer. So we're going to have to get rid of that margin. How are we going to target that now? This is where we come into being more specific, okay, which is, again, something that you need to know. We need to target this inside of the footer. We can do that without giving it a class. Like, we could give it a class and do it that way, right? Footer H6. But I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. What we can do, because we only have one instance of this H6 inside of the footer. So we can say, hey, CSS, find any H6 that is inside of the footer and do something to it. How do we write that? We say dot footer H6. If I mouse over it, you'll see element with the class of footer and the H6 that is within. That's what we're targeting. So I could say, for example, font size. Just to over exaggerate it again. And it's going to be really big. That's really, really big. I'll just put that to like 40 pixels and you'll see, right? There it changed, but still there's that margin in there. We got to get rid of it. So we say margin. To get rid of margin, you just say margin 0, which is something that we did up here, margin 0. The body tag actually does have margin on it, and we already zeroed it out. This H6 now will have no margin on it, and it will zero out. You see? So let me just see if there's anything that I missed. Margins. Okay, we're gonna do We did padding, but we have to do something more that I have to show you. And then we got to do some background stuff. So margins, where can I do? Okay, yeah, we can do it with the, we're going to do it with the navigation. We have to fix the navigation anyway. Let me see. Actually, no, we can do it on this, on the, whoops. We can do it on this box because this is going to be our practice box here that we have not done anything with yet. Okay, so the stuff inside of the main that we're going to play with, like this little thing that we did down here, we're gonna exit off. So Command X to cut it, and we're gonna paste it underneath the main because these things are things that are in the main that we're gonna be playing with. So we want them to be right underneath the main. Okay. So we played around with this red H1 that we still have there, and it's still red, which is all good. Right? Remember we made a box, this div here, and it's empty, there's nothing in it, but we're gonna make it look like something. And this could be the last thing we do because we're coming up on time here, and I don't want to go too far. I don't want to start doing. We could do the nav, but we might actually have to save that for next week. Okay, so the box. We named it class of box. This div, let me just save that. This div, the box div that we have there, it is on the page, but we can't see it. Let me change the font size real quick, the paragraph to a more less annoying size there. That box is on the page, but we cannot see it. Why can we not see it? See, it's there. See how it points to it, but it's just like it's there, but there's no width, there's no height. We can't see it. It's like a ghost. we have to do something to it to make it not be a ghost. What do we got to do to it? First off, we have to give it a height and a width, but even when we give it a height and a width, we're still not going to be able to see it. I'm going to show you. Watch. Height, 400 pixels. Width, 400 pixels. I'm going to leave it at that. Now watch. We know that this box is right there. See where it says div box? See? Right around here. When I mouse over the div, it says div box there. We're going to end up seeing, when I refresh this page, the space between here and here is going to widen. Why? Because I gave that div a width and a height of 400 pixels. So the space is going to be there. See? We still can't see it. Why? See, it's there. See, it's highlighted. The blue highlighted part there is the box. We can't see it because we haven't done anything to it. There's nothing in it, right? Remember, we didn't put anything in it. If I write in here something, this is the box, then we'll see the content in it, but you still won't see the box itself. Right? What we're trying to do is something different. If I give the box a background color, now we'll see the box. See? 400 by 400. If I got rid of this and put a border, whoops, 10px solid red, then we will also still see the box. I could change this to dotted to make the border dotted. Whoops, I did that wrong. Solid. Changed it with the color dotted. There. There. It'll be dotted. Or we can make it dashed, which will change the dots to dashed. Okay? So you have to remember something about a div. A div is, like I said before, it's an empty container, an all-purpose empty jar that we can use to put stuff in. A div is like when you have those Rubbermaid bins that you can just put your junk in. That's the same thing. It's like an all-purpose container. And they don't have any shape or form until you give it shape and form, or until you put something in it, like text, whatever, some type of content, okay? Or until you do something like this, till you give it form and shape, right? Now, the last thing that we're going to do is background image. Now, to do a background image, there are some things we're going to need. So, when you are going to use a background image, there's a couple of different things you can do. You can do a repeating background image, which is something like this that repeats forever. So let me see if I can hot link to this. Was open in a new tab. Yeah. No, it's probably not going to let me do that. So let me just find the week that we're in. And then just save it as repeat like that. Okay, so watch. In the HTML, I could say background image, and then I can say URL bracket bracket, and inside of the bracket bracket, inside of here is where I'm going to tell this CSS where the background image is. It's in the img folder / did it save there? Yeah. Or no, it's not in the just img. I have to go up one. So .. Remember I showed you this. I'm pretty sure I showed everybody this, but just in case. We have to navigate out of, okay, this file here is in this folder. We have to tell this file to look outside of this folder, to look into this folder, and then go into this folder. Okay, now, how do computers do that? There's a certain way computers do that, and all computers do it the same way. You have to tell it .. / and see, notice how when I told it .. / it went outside of this CSS folder and is now in the the root folder of the project. Then I can say go into the image folder and find that file that we have saved there. Okay, so when I save that now, we're going to take a look and bam. Now obviously there's something going on here that we need to fix. We need to tell now the wrapper to have a background color. Hashtag FFF to make it white and restore it back to its former glory of looking all nice. But now you can see we have a repeating background image that just keeps repeating over and over and over again. It's not the best background image because look, see how it has a clip there? Right here, it's clipping. So this wouldn't be the best option for us to use. This one looks better, I think. There we go. You just let it load and I'll save it. No, it did load. It's just bad quality. So screw that. So maybe they're coming up bad quality, man. It's either that or my internet is slow. Yep, my internet's slow. Which might have been the reason why the live stream would not work. Okay, here's a good one. So save and there. So I'm going to change this to the file that I named. Or we can just do this again. Image, repeat BG, load that, reload that, and there. Much better. Okay, so that is a background image. This background image is just going to repeat over and over and over again. Now, there are things that we could do with this background image like this. Background, repeat, and we can say repeat X, which will repeat it only on the X axis, which is what we're not going to want that obviously, but just to show you. It's only going to repeat going across the page. Or we could say repeat Y, which would only repeat it going down the page. Now, I mean, this would work better than it going across because sometimes you might want to do something like that. Like maybe you have you could also have a background gradient and have it going across the page. There's different things you could do, but just to show you, I don't want to make this too complicated. But those are two things we can do. Repeat it X or repeat it Y or just repeat. And it'll go back to the default of repeating on both axes. Just to show you something, if I got rid of this in here, I'm going to exit, like cut it, and I'm just going to paste it somewhere else. I'll paste it in the header. And it'll do the same thing, but within the confines of the header. This white space up here is margin from this, which we could zero out the same way we zeroed out this. Okay. But just to show you, you can put this background image anywhere and it'll do the same thing within the confines, see, of that area. See? So that's how a background image works. It's just a background image of whatever div, whatever thing. I can put it in the box and it'll just be within that box that we made. You see? So I come back here, put it back in the HTML. If you put it in the body, it'll do the same thing as the HTML. You just have to remember one thing, and this is something I'm going to be repeating over and over and over again. The body selector naturally has margin, and you won't see it there, but if we were to do a full width website, then you would see it, and you'll be banging your head against the wall. This is why I usually zero out the margin there. But you can put your backgrounds on the body selector instead of the HTML. I just prefer to do it on the HTML. But it's going to work the same and do the same. Okay? So we should probably leave it there for now and let your mind kind of let all of what I showed you work itself in. So, like I said, we will on Friday. I'll do the stream as per regular at the regular time. Hopefully, it works and there's no issues on the YouTube side. I'm gonna call my ISP and make sure that everything is okay on their end, and we'll keep it moving. So, we'll see you in the next one.